August 14, 2024, 7:47 p.m. A frantic mother ran into a Big Five sporting goods store in Yucaipa, California, screaming that her baby had been taken. She claimed a stranger had knocked her unconscious in the parking lot. When she woke up, 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro was gone. But within days, investigators would uncover a horrifying truth. There was no kidnapping, there was no stranger, and little Emmanuel was never coming home. This is the story of a father who murdered his infant son, fabricated an elaborate cover story that fooled thousands, and stood before a judge to hear the words that would seal his fate forever. A case where a community's desperate search for a missing baby ended in a courtroom with a guilty plea that confirmed everyone's worst nightmare. When Rebecca Haro burst into that Big Five store on that August evening, she set in motion one of the most intensive searches in Southern California history. Law enforcement from multiple agencies mobilized immediately. Volunteers flooded the streets. The community of Yucaipa, a quiet town about 70 miles east of downtown Los Angeles, came together in ways they never had before. Rebecca's story was simple, devastating, terrifying. She told deputies with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department that she had been in her vehicle, parked in the Big Five parking lot, changing Emmanuel's diaper. She said she heard someone say the word "hola" behind her. Then nothing. When she regained consciousness, she was lying on the pavement with a black eye. Her baby was gone. The Big Five sporting goods parking lot on that Wednesday evening became ground zero for an investigation that would quickly take a dark turn. Deputies arrived within minutes. They interviewed Rebecca. They searched the area. They brought in scent-tracking dogs. The K9 units worked through the night, trying to pick up Emmanuel's trail. But the dogs found nothing. No scent trail leading away from the vehicle. No indication that a baby had been carried through that parking lot. The first red flags were already appearing. Rebecca Haro gave tearful interviews to local news stations. Her right eye was visibly bruised. She appeared distraught, desperate. In one interview that would later be played in courtrooms and analyzed by millions online, she described those terrifying moments. "I got him out of the car seat and I laid him down so I could get his diapers ready," Rebecca told reporters, her voice breaking. "Somebody said hola, and that's all I remember. I saw white and I fell on the floor. As soon as I got up, I couldn't find my son. I checked all around my truck." Her husband, Jake Haro, stood beside her, also pleading for help. "He's just a baby," Jake said to the cameras. "Just give our son back, please." Before we continue with what investigators discovered next, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Here at True Crime Vault, we unlock the cases that deserve to be remembered. We bring you in-depth investigations into real crimes that shocked communities and changed lives forever. New investigations every week. Now, let's get back to what was really happening behind the scenes. While the public search for Emmanuel intensified, investigators were already seeing problems with the Haros' account. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department began conducting extensive interviews. They spoke with family members. They reviewed surveillance footage from the Big Five store and surrounding businesses. They analyzed digital evidence from the couple's phones, and with each piece of evidence they collected, Rebecca's story fell apart. On August 17th, just 3 days after Emmanuel was reported missing, the Sheriff's Department released a statement that sent shockwaves through the community. Rebecca Haro had been confronted with inconsistencies in her initial statement. When pressed by investigators about these discrepancies, she declined to continue with the interview. She stopped cooperating entirely. The search shifted. Instead of looking for a kidnapped baby and an unknown suspect, deputies began focusing on the Haro family home in Cabazon, a desert community about 20 miles west of Palm Springs. Cabazon was approximately 27 miles from Yucaipa, where the alleged kidnapping had occurred. Law enforcement descended on the Haro residence. They served multiple search warrants. K9 units trained in cadaver detection were brought to the property. Neighbors watched in growing horror as the investigation that had started as a search for a missing child transformed into something far more sinister. Deputies were seen speaking extensively with Jake Haro outside the family home. His vehicle was seized for evidence collection. Every detail of the couple's lives was being scrutinized by investigators who now believed they were dealing not with a kidnapping, but with a homicide. On August 22nd, 8 days after Emmanuel was reported missing, Deputies with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Homicide Detail and Specialized Enforcement Division arrived at the Cabazon home. Jake Mitchell Haro and Rebecca Renee Haro were placed under arrest. Both were charged with murder. Both were charged with filing a false police report. The Sheriff's Department issued a statement that confirmed what many had begun to fear. Based on the evidence, investigators determined a kidnapping in Yucaipa did not occur. It is believed Emmanuel is deceased, and the search to recover his remains is ongoing. There was no stranger. There was no attack. There was no kidnapping. 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro had never left his parents' custody, and investigators believed he was dead. But where was his body? What had happened to this infant? And how could parents fabricate such an elaborate story while their baby lay dead? On August 27th, Riverside County District Attorney Mike Hestrin held a news conference that would reveal the truly disturbing nature of this case. Hestrin was joined by San Bernardino County Sheriff Shannon Dykes, Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco, Assistant District Attorney Brandon Smith, and San Bernardino Sergeant Nicholas Clark, the lead investigator. The charges were formal now. Jake Mitchell Haro, born February 9, 1993, and Rebecca Renee Haro, born February 3, 1984, each faced 1 count of murder and 1 count of filing a false police report. Both were being held on $1 million bail. The evidence shows that baby Emmanuel endured ongoing abuse that ultimately took his life, District Attorney Hestrin stated. His words were measured but devastating. Our office is committed to ensuring that justice is done for this child and that his short life is not forgotten. But Hestrin revealed something else at that press conference, something that made this case even more heartbreaking. Jake Haro had a history, a documented history of child abuse that should have sent him to prison years before Emmanuel was even born. In 2018, Jake Haro's infant daughter from a previous marriage had been brought to the hospital with catastrophic injuries. The baby, just 10 weeks old, had suffered an acute rib fracture, a partial bone fracture of the skull, brain hemorrhage, signs of a healing tibia fracture, and multiple other rib fractures in various stages of healing. The pattern of injuries indicated sustained, repeated abuse. The injuries were so severe that the child was left permanently bedridden. She would never walk. She would never feed herself. She had developed cerebral palsy as a direct result of the abuse inflicted upon her by her own father. Jake Haro was arrested. He was charged with willful cruelty to a child. In 2023, he pleaded guilty to that charge in Riverside County Court. The district attorney's office strongly objected to the proposed sentence, arguing that Jake Haro needed to go to prison given the heinous and permanent nature of his daughter's injuries. But the judge in that case, a visiting judge from San Bernardino County, made a decision that would haunt everyone involved. Instead of prison, Jake Haro received a suspended sentence. He was ordered to serve just 180 days in a work release program, essentially community service, and was placed on probation. District Attorney Hestrin did not mince words about this decision. I will say that it was an outrageous error in judgment by this judge, Hestrin stated at the August press conference. If that judge had done his job as he should have done, Emmanuel would be alive today. Jake Haro walked free. He was given a second chance, and 7-month-old Emmanuel paid the price. In June 2024, while still on probation for the child abuse conviction, Jake Haro was caught with a loaded handgun and ammunition. He was a convicted felon in possession of a firearm. Yet again, he avoided significant jail time. Then came August 14th, 2024, the day Emmanuel disappeared, the day his parents claimed he was kidnapped, the day that would eventually lead Jake Haro to a courtroom where he would have to answer for what he had done. The search for Emmanuel's remains became a grim focus for investigators. Days after Jake's arrest, he was seen on the side of the 60 freeway in Moreno Valley. He was dressed in orange inmate attire, shackled, and accompanied by sheriff's deputies and cadaver dogs. Media helicopters captured aerial footage of the search. Dozens of law enforcement personnel combed through fields and brush, but no remains were found that day. Emmanuel's body, wherever it was, remained hidden. At the August press conference, District Attorney Hestrin said investigators had a pretty strong indication of where Emmanuel's remains might be located. But as weeks turned into months, and as the case moved through the court system, that indication never led to recovery. The filing in this case reflects our belief that baby Emmanuel was abused over time, Hestrin explained. Eventually, because of that abuse, he succumbed to those injuries. Prosecutors believed the evidence showed Emmanuel had died as a result of repeated acts of abuse. The assaults had been ongoing, chronic, until finally, the 7-month-old infant could endure no more. Both Jake and Rebecca Haro initially pleaded not guilty. They appeared in court on September 4th for their arraignment. Both were represented by public defenders. The prosecution began building its case, preparing to introduce evidence under California Evidence Code Section 1109, which allows prosecutors to present evidence of prior acts of abuse to demonstrate a pattern of behavior. For Jake Haro, that pattern was already documented. The 2018 abuse of his daughter, the permanent devastating injuries he had inflicted, the fact that he had been given probation and community service instead of prison time. It would all be admissible. The case proceeded through the court system. Felony settlement conferences were scheduled. These conferences are informal discussions between prosecution and defense attorneys in front of a judge, where they exchange information and attempt to negotiate a resolution. Multiple conferences took place throughout September and early October. Rebecca maintained her not guilty plea, but Jake's attorneys were facing an overwhelming amount of evidence: digital forensics from phones, surveillance footage, witness statements, physical evidence collected from the family home and vehicle, medical experts who could testify about the pattern of abuse. On October 16, 2025, Jake Mitchell Haro appeared in court for another felony settlement conference. What happened next shocked no one, but still sent ripples through the community that had searched desperately for baby Emmanuel. Jake Haro changed his plea from not guilty to guilty on all charges. He pleaded guilty to 1 count of murder, 1 count of assault on a child under 8 years old causing death, 1 count of filing a false police report. His guilty pleas were entered directly to the court, not as part of a plea agreement with the district attorney's office. This meant that the judge, not prosecutors, would determine his sentence. District Attorney Hestron's office issued a statement: because there are still active criminal proceedings involving Rebecca Haro, the district attorney's office will be making no additional comments regarding the case or the guilty pleas of Jake Haro. Jake Haro's sentencing was scheduled for November 3, 2025, the same day that Rebecca Haro was scheduled to appear for her preliminary hearing. In the weeks between Jake's guilty plea and his sentencing, a community group that had formed during the search for Emmanuel prepared to make their voices heard. They called themselves Emmanuel's Warriors. They had attended every court hearing, standing as a voice for the baby who could no longer speak for himself. November 3, 2025, the Riverside Hall of Justice. Superior Court Judge Gary Polk presided over the sentencing hearing for Jake Mitchell Haro. The courtroom was packed. Emmanuel's Warriors filled the gallery. Media from across Southern California had cameras positioned outside. But perhaps the most powerful voice that day belonged to Mary Buchhausen, Emmanuel's maternal grandmother. Rebecca Haro's own mother, a woman who had never been allowed to meet her grandson because Jake had kept Rebecca's family away. Mary Buchhausen addressed the court directly. She looked at Jake Haro and spoke words that carried the weight of unbearable loss. "He destroyed my family," she said. "Everybody in my family, all my children, are destroyed by this. He changed my daughter. We don't know who she is. He kept my daughter away. I don't know what he did or how he changed my daughter's life, but she was never that same person after she went to live with him." She asked Judge Polk to give Jake Haro the maximum sentence. "I stand here with you, asking you to give him the maximum," she stated. "I don't want to give him another chance." The prosecution presented their sentencing recommendation. They asked for 31 years to life in state prison. This included 25 years to life for the murder of Emmanuel, plus additional time for the prior child abuse case and the weapons charge. Assistant District Attorney Brandon Smith submitted written arguments to the court. His words were stark and uncompromising. Jake Haro murdered 7-month-old Emmanuel, but in reality, he comes before this court having taken the lives of 2 young children. If there are lower forms of evil in this world, I am not aware of them. The reference to 2 children was clear. Jake's daughter from 2018, though she survived, would never have a normal life. She was permanently bedridden, permanently damaged. In a very real sense, the child she might have been was gone forever. Jake Haro's defense attorney requested that no court fees or fines be imposed, noting that Haro was indigent and represented by a public defender. But Judge Gary Polk had heard enough. The judge looked at Jake Haro and delivered his sentence. His words left no doubt about how seriously he viewed this case. "Mr. Haro, the man who was supposed to protect these defenseless children," Judge Polk stated, "the sentence here is the most that the court can do to ensure that as much justice is done as possible. For the murder of 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro, Jake was sentenced to 25 years to life in state prison. The court found that child abuse resulting in death was the principal offense and imposed an indeterminate term. This meant Jake would serve a minimum of 25 years before even being eligible for parole consideration. But Judge Polk wasn't finished. For filing a false police report, Jake received an additional 180 days. For the prior 2018 child abuse case, the 6-year suspended sentence was now imposed, adding 6 years to his time. For being a felon in possession of a firearm, he received 8 more months. All sentences were ordered to run consecutively, one after another, not concurrently. The total, more than 31 years before Jake Haro would even be eligible for parole. And given the nature of his crimes, parole was far from guaranteed. Judge Polk also ordered Jake to pay $10,000 in restitution. He was credited with 551 days already served while awaiting trial. As the sentence was read, members of Emmanuel's warriors in the courtroom felt a mixture of emotions. "When I heard him plead guilty to the counts he was given, I wanted to just cry," said Carla Jaramillo, a member of the group. "I feel like we got justice for the baby." But justice felt incomplete, because Emmanuel's body had still not been found. Months of searches, dozens of locations examined, K-9 units, ground-penetrating radar, tips from the public investigated. Nothing had led to the recovery of Emmanuel's remains. District Attorney Hestron addressed this in his statement following the sentencing. The lies told in this case only deepened the tragedy of Emmanuel's death. While today's sentence represents a measure of accountability for Jake Haro, our office will continue to seek justice as the case against his co-defendant moves forward. Rebecca Haro's case was proceeding separately. On the same day as Jake's sentencing, she was scheduled for a preliminary hearing, but that hearing was continued, rescheduled to January 21, 2026. Rebecca maintained her not guilty plea to charges of murder and filing a false police report. In a jailhouse interview with the Press Enterprise newspaper after her arrest, Rebecca had defended both herself and Jake. She insisted Jake would never hurt an infant. She declared her innocence. But with Jake now having pleaded guilty and been sentenced, her defense became significantly more complicated. Legal experts noted that prosecutors would likely use Jake's guilty plea as evidence in Rebecca's trial. They could argue that if Jake admitted to killing Emmanuel, Rebecca must have known something, must have been complicit in some way. The false police report charge alone indicated she had participated in the cover-up. On October 28, 2025, Rebecca made a brief court appearance. She was in custody, appearing before the judge for less than 5 minutes. Her felony settlement conference was rescheduled to January 2026. If she continued to maintain her not guilty plea, the case would proceed to a preliminary hearing where a judge would determine if sufficient evidence existed to proceed to trial. As this case moved forward, advocacy groups began pushing for legislative change. The Uvalde Foundation for Kids, originally founded after the tragic 2022 Robb Elementary School shooting, shifted some of its focus to child welfare and systemic reform. They began advocating for Emmanuel's Law, proposed legislation that would close legal gaps and prevent judges from giving probation in severe child abuse cases. The argument was simple and compelling. If Jake Haro had been sent to prison in 2023 for nearly killing his daughter, Emmanuel would still be alive. The judge who gave Jake probation instead of prison time had, however unintentionally, enabled a murder. This case raises disturbing questions about how the criminal justice system handles child abusers, about judicial discretion and whether some crimes are simply too severe to warrant second chances, about the price that innocent children pay when adults fail them. Jake Haro was an experienced child abuser. That phrase, used by District Attorney Hestron, was not hyperbole. Jake had demonstrated a pattern, his infant daughter in 2018, then Emmanuel. The abuse was repeated, calculated, and ultimately fatal. The fact that Emmanuel's body has never been recovered adds another layer of tragedy to this case. Without remains, the family has no closure, no place to visit, No grave where they can mourn. Emmanuel simply vanished, and only Jake and possibly Rebecca know where he is. Legal experts note that prosecuting murder cases without a body is challenging but not impossible. Strong circumstantial evidence, digital forensics, witness testimony, and other factors can be enough for a conviction. Jake's guilty plea eliminated the need for trial in his case. But if Rebecca's case goes to trial, prosecutors will need to present that evidence to a jury. The community of Yucaipa, where this nightmare began on that August evening, has been forever changed. The Big Five sporting goods parking lot where Rebecca claimed the kidnapping occurred is now a place people drive past with heavy hearts. Everyone remembers those first frantic hours when volunteers searched, when hope still existed that a baby might be found alive and returned safely. That hope died with Jake Haro's guilty plea. The confirmation that there never was a kidnapping, that Emmanuel had died from abuse at the hands of his own father, that the desperate search had been based on lies. Today, Jake Mitchell Haro sits in a California state prison, serving a sentence of 25 years to life, plus additional time. He will be 70 years old before he is even eligible for his first parole hearing. Given the heinous nature of his crimes and his prior conviction, parole boards are unlikely to be sympathetic. Rebecca Haro remains in custody at the Robert Presley Detention Center, held on $1 million bail. Her next court appearance is scheduled for January 21, 2026. If she proceeds to trial, a jury will decide her fate. And Emmanuel Haro, who would be just over a year old now, remains missing. His short life, just 7 months, ended in violence. His body has never been recovered. His story has become a rallying cry for child welfare advocates who demand better protection for the most vulnerable among us. If this case has affected you, or if you're interested in cases that examine the failures of our justice system and the fight for accountability, make sure to subscribe to True Crime Vault for more in-depth investigations. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts. Do you think Rebecca knew what happened to Emmanuel? Should judges have the discretion to give probation in severe child abuse cases? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And remember, these aren't just stories. These are real people, real lives, and real tragedies. Emmanuel Haro deserved better. He deserved protection. He deserved justice. And while his father will spend decades behind bars, the search for answers continues. The search for Emmanuel continues. This is True Crime Vault, unlocking the cases that deserve to be remembered.